For many thousands of years, ceremonies have taken place on this country. Ceremonies that would welcome people to the country. Corroborees and ceremonies to celebrate the dreaming. In Aboriginal culture, country is more than just a word or a place. It's a feeling. It describes the entirety of the ancestral domains and holds the stories that continue to be told by the traditional custodians of the land. Stories of significance that have been passed down through the generations of Aboriginal people. Stories that continue to be shared to remind us of the rich Aboriginal culture that surrounds us. A better understanding and respect for Aboriginal culture develops an enriched appreciation of Australia's cultural heritage and is essential to the maturity of Australia and is fundamental to the development of an Australian identity. We would like to acknowledge the country and the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today. We pay respect to the elders, past, present and emerging, who guide our spiritual and learning journey, and extend that respect to all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us today.
Hello, Anne Lay, Minister for Local Government, Water, Fire, Disaster Recovery and Volunteers. Sorry I can't be with you today, but I know how important National Fire Protection Month is to Queenslanders. And I'd like to thank everyone who's come along today to make this a very successful day and the presenters who've been here. It's incumbent on everyone to take fire safety very seriously, because otherwise, if they don't, it can end in tragedy. And that's why it's so important this week for National Fire Protection Month. And it's so good to see all of you here today, and I'm sorry I can't be with you.
Thank you, Minister Lay. Very much appreciated, and welcome everyone to this informative session, asking and answering the question, are you prepared and are your smoke alarms compliant? What every Queensland property owner needs to know. This is a session specifically for Queenslanders, but welcome anyone that has joined us from outside of the great state of Queensland. My name is John Colley. I'm the CEO of FPA Australia. And at Fire Protection Association Australia, we are the peak body for fire protection nationally. Our mission is to support industry and communities to prevent the loss of life, property and the environment. But importantly, fire safety is not just the responsibility of industry associations and experts, it's a shared duty. In Australia, more than one fire-related death occurs every week in a residential setting. Clearly one too many. And each one of those has a lasting social, economic and emotional impact, not just on the families, but on the broader communities and on the emergency service workers that are responding to those incredible tragedies. Events like these and the types of information that we get to share don't happen by accident, and I really do want to thank our, in particular, our platinum members and sponsors of these events. So Wormworld, Uptick, Flamestop, Chubb, Alan Wilson, Insurance Brokers and Johnson Controls. Thank you very much for your contributions to enable these kind of events to take place. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. There'll be time for questions at the end, but by all means, start populating the question panel, if you can see it on the right-hand side, with any questions that you might have as they pop up, and we'll do our best to get through those. We have some time constraints, and hopefully most of the questions that you might have will be answered by our expert panelists. But certainly it's important that we get everyone heard. But equally, get involved with the FPA. Come across to our website. I know that there's a host of members and non-members that have joined us today to get the insights into some of these important issues. But fire protection, both for your home and for your businesses and beyond, doesn't just stop at smoke alarms. It's far-reaching. It's the systems that you put in place to prevent fire, the environment with which and ecosystems with which we live, and beyond. So I'd encourage you to get involved with the Fire Protection Association Australia at fpa.com.au, fpaa.com.au. Just a very quick overview of the talented pool that we have with us here. So Brad Hay is a managing director of GT High Performance Smoke Alarms, and our friend Inspector Paul Titman, from the manager of Building Approvals Unit for Queensland Fire Department, the newly named Fire Department. From those that may be playing at home, it was previously QFES. Zane Russell, thank you so much for joining us, from Non-Conforming Building Products Auditor out of the QBCC. Alan Wilson, our resident OAM, thank you very much for joining us, and looking forward to hearing your perspectives on insurance. So Executive Director of Alan Wilson Insurance Brokers, and Matthew Duncan, the Technical Support Manager for Master Electricians Australia. We're very proud and happy to have another association come along and join us on this mission. With that, I will hand over to Brad Hay, who's an FPA Australia member and state committee member. So thank you for your ongoing support, and the Managing Director of High Performance Smoke Alarms. Take it away, Brad. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And I wanted to thank everyone for coming along today and signing in. I know I reached out to the broader community that I'm personally in touch with regarding this important piece of legislation that we have been working on, certainly within the smoke alarm compliance industry for a number of years now. For those who don't know me, a quick walk through on who I am and my background and my history. Obviously, I'm a founding director of GT High Performance Smoke Alarms, and we've been in business for a couple of years now. Prior to that, I worked at Red Smoke Alarms, and that was basically from startup to 2023 when it was sold and moved on, and I created GT Smoke Alarms from there. Prior to that, I was the National Sales Manager at Smoke Alarm Testing Services for about 4 years, working with real estate agents and certainly working through that upgrade of that first stage of legislation in Queensland for the smoke alarm upgrades. And then prior to that, I was at the REIQ as the commercial manager at REIQ for a number of years, and I was there when this legislation was first introduced. So in the breadth of the last 10 years, I've certainly been across this from every part of this legislation, from its inception through the property management system, through rentals, through to the compliance and delivery of that into rental properties, and now via both Red Smoke Alarms and GT Smoke Alarms in the manufacture, and the sale into electrical wholesales and to installers and contractors. So I come to you with a little bit of knowledge about how this works from all angles. So from that, I will lead off and just say that I'm probably going to do, in my little presentation here, a little brief overview of what we're going to cover off today. And I know that certainly with the expert commentary that we've got coming after me, they'll go into a little bit more colour and clarity on many of the points. So without me labouring on any one point, I'll give a quick walkthrough on what we're going to cover and how important this is. Certainly from my angle, and just starting off, I joined FPAA for the very reason that I knew that this was a very important topic that needed some more exposure into the broader marketplace, and I'm really happy and proud to see that this is happening as part of National Fire Protection Month, certainly in Queensland. It's a very important topic. So I guess from that, and we'll walk through this, what every Queensland property owner needs to know. But the legislation obviously came about from a coroner's report from a horrendous fire that happened in 2011 at Slacks Creek, and I'm pretty sure that most people in this industry and community are aware of that horrific fire that was the knee-jerk moment to cause the coroner's report to recommend and implement to have interconnected smoke alarms throughout all properties. So I guess the tail of the tape on what we need to see here now is that first stage of legislation we've seen come through, which was the rental properties. So that was the up to the start of 2022 it needed to be done by. So we had from 2017 to the end of 2021 to get every rental property in Queensland up to the new level of compliance, which was having a interconnected smoke alarm in every bedroom on every level throughout every dwelling. So what does that mean? That means a tail of the tape, and hopefully you can see the screen here that we've popped up and the numbers. And these are my numbers that I've done a little bit of research on. So please, there's probably a little bit of room in flexibility on what these numbers are, but I would suspect they are fairly close to the truth from the homework that I've done and then the research that I've looked into. So obviously with since 2014, there's been a building code for Queensland, so there needs to be interconnected alarms as part of a new build. So with 11 years on, that's about something in the ballpark of 330,000 properties have been built, which would now have hardwired interconnected alarms. Then we roll into the beginning of the new upgraded legislation for the rental properties, and we know at time of doing that back in 2021, there was about 550,000 rental properties in Queensland. So they had all been upgraded as part of this as well, which obviously the number comes to about just shy of 900,000 properties should be by now upgraded to the interconnected standards of the legislation. So with that in play, you'll see there's about 2.2 million dwellings in Queensland, less than 880 that are done. So and again, this is a subjective number that this could be, more or less, but I'm pretty confident this number is true. You've got somewhere in the ballpark of 1.3 or more properties, million, I should say, 1.3 million properties or more that will need to be done, that are yet to be done. And that is to get a working interconnected smoke alarm in every bedroom, on every level. And that needs to be done before the end of next year. So again, going into it, we've got some people behind me speaking today that are going to cover off on these numbers, but clearly you'll see that, with just something around about 400 working days left to install something in the ballpark of over 6 million smoke alarms into 1.3 million properties, it is not a small task. And making noise about this today and moving forward is a critically important part of getting these laws and legislation implemented. From what it's worth, I believe, and certainly personally, there's a reason these laws change, and that is not because it's a commercial environment. It's not about selling smoke alarms. This is because too many people died with the current laws the way they are, and we need to address them, and they have. And that is to get working, interconnected photoelectric smoke alarms in every bedroom and every hallway and every level, and that's what this will do. So again, we go through the upgrade of what that looks like, so that when one alarm goes off, they all go off. They have to be photoelectric, not ionisation. Hardwired alarms have to be swapped out like for like. So you can't take down a hardwired alarm, a 240 alarm, and pop up a battery alarm. That property has been signed off as having hardwired alarms. So upgrading those, the power source must remain the same. It has to be an interconnectable alarm. So certainly we've got products and services in our industry that you can make hardwired alarms wirelessly connecting to every other smoke alarm in the property. So that has to happen. And of course they have to be have a full 10 years of life to them. So that is the law. So as we covered off again, in every bedroom, in hallways outside of bedrooms, we need to have at least one on every level. And again, as far as having these alarms installed, they need to be in the direction of where an exit of the property is. And so obviously there's little bits and pieces, which for the installers that are in the room, the compliance companies, you guys will know this. This is part of the legislation. You need to be at least the length of a school ruler away from the cornice, because we know that there is a dead air zone when it comes to the corners there. So these are all the instructional things that, and I'll touch on this point, and our friends at Master Electricians will go into this a little bit further in detail when they speak, but the do-it-yourself market I am concerned about, as everyone is, not to say that we can't do that or people shouldn't be doing that, but they certainly need to be educated on not only what to install, but where to install, and it's certainly on the nuances such as knowing where dead air zones are and the requirements of having them at least 30 centimetres from a wall, not near air conditioners, not near fan blades. There's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be thought about when installing alarms, and it just further supports the theory of using an expert when upgrading that property. So again, we walk into the responsibilities from the property owners, and certainly this information is broadly available, but from a point of view of ensuring that all the smoke alarms are compliant by the 1st of January 2027. Homeowners have a responsibility with that. And again, we've got our friends in the insurance world that are going to cover off on that a little bit further on in our webinar today. Landlords are already there, of course. Their investment properties have to have interconnected working smoke alarms. That is law. They can't lease or they cannot renew a lease of a property until that is done. And of course, selling a property is the other thing now as part of that second stage of the legislation that we're currently in. You can't sell a property in Queensland without having the smoke alarms being interconnected. Should you do that, there is a small caveat to that. A non-compliance may be a penalty of a 0.15 on the sale price. Most real estate agents now are well and truly across this, and they do this as part of the sales procedure. So that adds towards the moving target of getting all the Queensland properties upgraded in time. At that point, obviously, they'll issue compliance certificates where required, and that'll be in the form of that the property has been made compliant with the correct alarms in the correct places. So that is part of that process. Maintenance tips, we talk about this just very quickly. Now you've got a lot more alarms in your property. You've got a lot more chance of false alarms happening. That's just one of the byproducts of having 6 to 8 smoke alarms in your property now. They are a product that is susceptible to environmental factors. So common complaints of alarms going off 2 a.m. in the morning. That's typically a humidity scenario. One of those little known facts, the most moist, dense part of a 24-hour day is typically around 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. That is why smoke alarms tend to go off at that time of the morning, not because they like waking you up. It's because they are seeing moisture in the air. And so from a photoelectric smoke alarms point of view, when it sees a contaminant in the air quality has reduced, it doesn't decipher between smoke or mist or moisture. It will alert you to wake you up to get you out, because the very purpose of every smoke alarm is to wake you up in the event of a fire, because we can't smell when we're asleep. That's the job of the smoke alarm, to do that. So it will spot something in the air quality has been reduced, and it'll wake you up to get your attention if that is the case. So just on that side tip on that, I would say that everyone that has had or will have issues with smoke alarms, their problem's not with the alarm, their problem is with the environment the alarm is in. You control the environment, you will control that alarm. That's from a guy that's been in this game for a long time. I can assure you of that before you take aim at the smoke alarm. When you start playing ceiling hockey with a broom and trying to knock them off and what have you, I would certainly look at the environment that alarm is in. So is it an environment that has got exposure to night air, moisture, if it's a really humid night, put your aircon on dry. There's a bunch of other stuff there that we can certainly talk to your manufacturer or your installer about that, should you be having some reliability issues, because typically it is the environment, not the alarm, that is causing that alarm to go off at extreme conditions within its environment. Okay, so we talk about non-compliance just very quickly, and I guess our insurance friends Alan will cover off on that later on. So there's certainly consequences for there, but I would say at a point, the biggest consequence you've got to come across is, again, these laws were changed because they weren't safe enough in the current environment, the laws that we have. The laws were changed to save more lives. The consequence of not doing this is that you may get yourself into a situation that you're in a residential fire, and the alarms, if you haven't got a compliant and you don't have enough working smoke alarms, or indeed you don't have working smoke alarms, full stop, you're in a situation where it's a livelihood and it's a safety situation. Don't worry about the non-compliance. Worry about safety of life, your loved ones and your family. That's really what you want to cover off on here. And that's, I guess, the point that sometimes can get lost in a lot of this legislation, is that people will do it because they've got a ticket box. Do it because it's safer. The sooner you do this, the safer you are. So that's obviously the really important thing. So to become compliant, what do you need to do? You need to either hire a professional, so licensed electricians who certainly know that there are plenty of smoke alarm companies. It's a very active marketplace for smoke alarm installers, local electricians. There are plenty of stuff, plenty of people available to help you with that. If you did want to do it yourself, there's plenty of information online to find out what you need to do with that. But my bottom line would be do plenty of research and homework before you toddle off to the hardware to think you can pop them up yourself. Or better still, get someone who is licensed and an expert in this. So as an industry, that is something that I think is quite important. Again, thank you again for the FPAA for allowing us to have smoke alarms as a feature of the National Fire Protection Month. And at that point in time, I'm probably going to throw over to Paul Titman now, who is the Manager of Building Approvals Unit for the Queensland Fire Department. And Paul will carry on where I've left off on smoke alarms in Queensland, the legislation, and what we need to do. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much for that, Brad. I'd just like to say good afternoon to all the webinar participants out there this afternoon. So my name is Inspector Paul Titman, and I'm the Manager of the Building Approval Unit for Greater Brisbane region for the Queensland Fire Department. I have extensive experience in the fire alarm management unit with monitored buildings and in the compliance and prosecution unit, working in that compliance space. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to engage as we move towards the last compliant date for the domestic smoke alarm legislation on the 1st of January next year. So next slide, please, Chloe. Thank you. Next one. So the Queensland Fire Department was established in July of 2024 as a dedicated fire and rescue response organisation. So at that time, the Act was amended to become the Fire Services Act 1990, and it reflects the establishment of QFD as the QFD is comprised of the Fire and Rescue Service, which is urban response, and the Rural Fire Service Queensland, which is bushfire response. And the organisation runs on the four pillars that we focus on is preparedness, prevention, response, and recovery. And the mission of the organisation is protect people, property, and the environment. Next slide, please, Chloe. So how did we get here? So in terms of the smoke alarm requirements that we have, obviously, these smoke alarm requirements in Queensland have evolved over time as legislation has changed. And as Brad alluded to earlier, in August of 2011, a residential house fire in Slacks Creek tragically claimed the lives of 11 people from 2 different families. So that was 3 women, 4 teenagers, and 4 children under the age of 10 all died in that fire. The incident and the subsequent coroner's inquest into this tragedy prompted a major change to Queensland's domestic smoke alarm legislation, which is now in the final stages of its rollout. So the coroner's report identified that working interconnected smoke alarms would likely have saved lives in this incident. So for anyone's interest, that coroner's report is actually available via a Google search as well. So it's quite a sobering read, but it's worth it if you want to see the background as to how this legislation evolved. Next slide, please. So common questions from the general public when we have inquiries sent in to us is around why we have to have interconnected smoke alarms. So the primary purpose of interconnected domestic smoke alarms is to protect sleeping occupants of residential dwellings. The basic fire science that Queensland firefighters go out to grade 1 classes and do their fire ed on is just as Brad alluded to before, is that you're unable to smell when you're asleep. So essentially your nose goes to sleep. So interconnected smoke alarms ensure that all sleeping occupants are alerted to a fire emergency in their home to provide sufficient time to evacuate from the house. Further to that, QFD encourages people to sleep with their bedroom doors shut at night, as this represents the greatest chances of survivability in a house fire. Next slide, please. So the legislation that explains the requirements. So the domestic smoke alarm obligations are explained for existing dwellings in the following legislation. So the Fire Services Act 1990, Division 5A, explains who has an obligation, the relevant compliant dates, testing obligations, and sets out the interconnection requirements of those alarms. Whereas the Building Fire Safety Regulation 2008 Part A explains the installation locations, measurement specifications, sets out AS 3786 2014 as the adopted standard, and it excludes smoke alarms with an ionisation sensor or those primarily powered by a 9-volt removable battery. So these are Queensland-specific requirements that are above the requirements of that Australian standard for interconnected smoke alarms. Next slide, please. What is the requirement? So currently it depends on what you have in your house, as Brad alluded to. So where you currently have hardwired smoke alarms, they must be replaced with AS 3786 2014 hardwired smoke alarms, which are installed by an electrician. So they're mains-powered alarms. Where you currently have battery-powered smoke alarms or in new installation locations that you haven't previously had a smoke alarm, you're able to utilize AS 3786-2014 battery-powered smoke alarms, which you can install yourself. You can also have what we are referring to as a combination system, where you may replace hardwired for hardwired, and in new locations, you're able to use 10-year battery smoke alarms and interconnect all of those combination alarms together to achieve a compliant system in your dwelling. But you'll need to check with the manufacturer to ensure the interconnection capability of those alarms and make sure that they'll talk to each other. So how are these powered? So smoke alarms compliant with the legislation can either be hardwired, which means that their primary source of power is mains powered, and that will either it'll have a secondary battery backup, and that battery backup will either be a 10-year non-removable lithium battery, or it'll be a 9-volt removable backup power source. And the other type of smoke alarm that you can use, or a battery-powered smoke alarm, is required to have a 10-year non-removable battery device in it. So as Brad alluded to before, the smoke alarms are only designed to have a 10-year functional performance life. So it's also important to note that Queensland does not accept 9-volt battery-powered AS 3786-2014 smoke alarms where other states do. So that's obviously the cheapest version of those alarms because it's made with a 9-volt battery powering it, but you're unable to utilise those smoke alarms in Queensland to become compliant with our legislation. Although they can be used and are sold in Queensland, so they can be used in standalone locations which are non-required locations. So I'll give an example of a shed or something like that where someone would like to install a smoke alarm. That's the type of alarm you can use there. Next page, please. Flexibility within the specification. So while the domestic smoke alarm legislation provides prescriptive installation requirements, it also provides Queensland homeowners with the flexibility to install a system that suits their needs and unique home design. So an example of that is period older homes in Queensland often have unique design features, such as hallway decorative bulkheads and things like that. So you may find that you have some flexibility to suit the unique architectural design of your home in the way that you place those smoke alarms, as long as you're still meeting the installation specification measurements. So these measurements are provided as a way of dealing with the dead air space around ceiling mounted fixtures that may negatively affect the performance of your installed smoke alarms. So what we mean by that is that the longer that the smoke takes to set off the smoke alarm, so if it has ceiling mounted fixtures that are going to inhibit that flow of smoke, then the less warning that sleeping occupants are going to receive to a potential fire emergency in their house. Next slide, please. QFD is the compliance agency. So QFD has invested significant time and resources into community education and engagement around the changing smoke alarm requirements. We believe this to be the most effective strategy to achieving broad compliance within the general public in Queensland. QFD is also empowered as the government regulator for domestic smoke alarm compliance. Powers articulated in the Fire Services Act in relation to preventative or investigative purposes underpin this role. So QFD investigates complaints relating to domestic smoke alarms and issues enforcement action as appropriate. So one of the challenges with this is that QFD tries to work proactively and engage with people on smoke alarm issues. If we were to issue an infringement for a smoke alarm non-compliance in a domestic dwelling, we would much rather people spend the money that would be the equivalent of the fine to actually update the smoke alarms in their house. So we try to work with dwelling owners proactively to get them to update their smoke alarms and reach the compliance standard that they're required, rather than trying to issue fines in the first instance, which then just becomes a barrier to the person achieving compliance in the first place. So it's also a matter of public record that there have been 2 successful prosecutions under the current legislation of landlords in Queensland for smoke alarm non-compliance in the Queensland Magistrates Court. So that's on the public record. Most of the complaints that we received at QFD are the result of rental property non-compliance, where we undertake investigations and work proactively with landlords to ensure they bring the properties up to the required compliance standard. Next slide, please. Smoke alarm inquiries. So the Queensland Fire Department provides a public-facing email address and phone number for the public to seek information on smoke alarm compliance. So I've provided that smoke alarm email address and number there. So that email address and phone number is staffed by compliance and prosecution staff with experience in the compliance space for smoke alarms. So you're able to contact that number and receive written responses on any questions that you may have that are particular to your type of dwelling. Finally, I'd like to mention that with extended families commonly residing together in dwellings, we are seeing more spaces in family homes, such as garages, used as bedrooms where they wouldn't have been used before. So despite the legislation not requiring smoke alarms in these non-bedroom locations, QFD would encourage occupants of these dwellings to ensure that there is a working smoke alarm wherever people sleep. Next slide, please. And I would be remiss if I didn't touch on the caravan smoke alarm legislation changes as well, given this opportunity. So new smoke alarm requirements for caravans and motorhomes have come into place in Queensland. So it's also been phased in to reduce the impact on Queenslanders. So currently, any newly registered, sold or transferred caravans are required to have at least one working smoke alarm installed. As of the 1st of the 1st, 27, which is our domestic smoke alarm compliance date as well, all registered caravans are required to have one working AS 3786 2014 smoke alarm installed in that caravan. These alarms are required to be powered by 10-year non-removable batteries. Thank you for your time this afternoon. I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Zane Russell from the QBCC.
Thank you, Paul. Just a quick one on that. If everyone has a look at the handouts, the information that Paul mentioned is available in the handouts, and it also has the contact email and telephone number for QFD if you're looking for that. Okay, so as Paul said, my name's Zane. I'm from the Queensland Building and Construction Commission, and I'm one of the non-conforming building product auditors. I've been with the Commission since 2020, and I'm a building certifier by profession, and I've worked for local government, state government, and in private practice and in the construction industry, not as a building certifier as well. Okay, so I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia and pay my respects to elders past and present, and acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are here with us today, and Wanya Nullum from Gubbi country, where I'm presenting from. So who are we at the QBCC? QBCC is the building and construction regulator for Queensland. Our aim is to support and enable a sustainable and resilient construction industry. How do we achieve this? We attempt to achieve this through enforcing proper building standards, by licensing building trade contractors, your builders, carpenters, tilers, etc., your plumbers and drainers, your building certifiers, and your pool safety inspectors. QBCC does not license electricians. Matthew from Master Electricians will be talking about that later in his presentation. We provide a dispute resolution service, which can also include an early dispute resolution service for contracts that are underway, and looking at potential defective building works when people are having their buildings built. We support the building industry through providing education and supporting building contractors and consumers through presentations like this, and we'll be at the home show on the weekend. If any of you are out and about, come and say hello to us at the stand. We regulate the building domestic contracts to try and get a balance, and that balance is for both contractors and homeowners to try and make it fair. We regulate the building product supply chain, and that's part of my role as a non-conforming building products auditor, to ensure that safe and compliant building products are being used within the industry in Queensland. We try and do this by making and communicating our decisions in a clear and effective manner to satisfy our regulatory requirements. Okay, so yep, I've told you who I am and my background. So what is a non-conforming building product? Firstly, let's go back and just speak a little bit about the legislation. So the non-conforming building product laws were enacted in 2017, back on the 1st of December. And they came about because of incidents that happened, like the smoke alarms from the Slacks Creek fire. The non-conforming building products legislation came in after the Lacrosse fire ran up the side of the building in Melbourne, and we've had a few other building fires that people may be aware of. Grenfell in London is another one. And the other catalyst was the infinity cable that was brought in from overseas that didn't comply with Australian standards and was causing a few fires. So they enacted the legislation to try and prevent that mischief. It's a duties-based legislation that requires people in the chain of responsibility to do certain things. And a person in the chain of responsibility is someone who designs a building product, who makes a building product, who imports a building product, or who supplies or provides a building product. So as a homeowner, if you were getting smoke alarms and giving them to an electrical contractor to install it, you would be in that supply chain because you are giving or supplying the product to the installer. So that's how we get the person in the chain of responsibility. The legislation's broken down into three basic parts. It tells us what an NCBP is. It tells us information to be supplied with building products. And a building product is a building product and plumbing product, but they just call them building products in the legislation. And it explains duties for an executive officer. So an executive officer is a company director, company secretary, the chief executive, or someone in a management position who can impact or have effect on different things for the building products to how they might be marketed or tested or things like that. Okay, can't speak about legislation without talking about a couple of definitions. So you'll notice on the screen there's the definition of a building product and a non-conforming building product. The bolded terms are terms that are defined, so they have a particular definition in Part 6AA of the QBCC Act that tells us what that means for our purpose. Notice the intended use. So a building product is a non-conforming building product for an intended use. So an example of an intended use might be you've got a gyprock, which is an internal lining on the house, and someone uses it as an external cladding. That's not the product's intended use. So that it couldn't be a non-conforming building product for that use. So incorrect use or poor installation is not a building product issue. That's the nutter that's been installing it incorrectly. And the definition of building product definitely includes a smoke alarm. Okay, so simple definition of a building product. You can see up on the screen there, safe. So the executive officers have a duty to make sure that they have done everything reasonably practicable to ensure that a product is not a non-conforming building product. The not meeting relevant regulatory requirements. So relevant regulatory requirements are the Building Act and the Plumbing and Drainage Act. And for smoke alarms, that's going to be looking at different parts of the National Construction Code, NCC, or the Building Code of Australia, and then the relevant standard that's called up, which has been previously mentioned, AS 3786, the 2014 version. And then representation. So is a product performing to the standard it is represented to? For example, with smoke alarms, they are represented to meet AS 3786. So some of the things that we might be looking for there would be noise levels and Wi-Fi interconnectability. So does it have the correct noise levels? The 85 dB at 3 meters up to a maximum of 105, and will the alarms talk to each other? Now we note, whilst there's a duty to provide information about building product, which I'll get into in a minute, not providing that information doesn't necessarily make a building product a non-conforming building product. It just means that the person in the chain of responsibility may have breached a duty, and they may have to answer some questions about that. Okay, smoke alarms, what we're here to talk about today. So firstly, the first thing that I would like to do is to reiterate, please use licensed installers, that is a licensed electrical contractor, for hardwired, interconnected photoelectric smoke alarms. Now, while we're talking about licensed installers, if you're doing any other building work in your place, please check the QBCC website and ensure that any of your contractors are also licensed. That's good protection for yourself. So what are some of the things for smoke alarms that we should be looking out for? So when you go to get a smoke alarm or you're looking at purchasing one, they're required to have certain things. And very common ones that get brought to our attention for being incorrect are the markings. So under AS 3786, smoke alarms are required to be marked with the standard that they comply with and the date. So that is AS 3786 2014, which is also referenced in the building regulation and the building fire safety regulation that Paul had previously mentioned. There should be a name or trademark and the address of the manufacturer or supplier. On the outside of your alarm, and have a look at your alarms at home or when you're in the shop, pick one up and you should be able to see on the alarm, if you can see it through the clear plastic, it should have the marking "do not paint" visible on the outside. And whilst people go, that's obvious, it's there for a reason, because we've seen a few as a certifier that have been painted, and that can affect how the alarm may work. It also has to have the alarm type, and in the standard they call it type A or type B, which is type A is a photoelectric and type B is the ionization. And remember how Paul explained that previously. Photoelectric is the smell, as we can't smell when we're asleep, unlike our dogs. Or the type B is an ionization. And if you see the trefoil, which is the black and yellow symbol with the yellow circle and what looks like the 3 fan blades for the radioactive material, they're the ones that we're not allowed to use nowadays. They must be ionization type. Another very important feature, and the others have already spoken about this, is the use by or expiration date. Now, this is 10 years from manufacturer, not 10 years from installation. If you have a hardwired smoke alarm and you pop it open so you can see where the battery goes in and you can see on the back of it, quite often that's where the date will be located, and the good installers will put an install date on it as well. So remember, that's the date from manufacturer, not the date from installation. That's very important because they lose their effectiveness, and it's a life safety feature which is trying to save our lives. On the packaging of a smoke alarm, some of the things to look out for would be the number of interconnected smoke alarms. A lot of us now, as we're getting more compressed for our housing and we're into multi-level housing, if you've got 4 bedrooms in a house and multiple levels, you're going to need at least 6 smoke alarms. Just check that your alarm can be interconnected with that many smoke alarms. So the package will say how many alarms it can be interconnected with. One of the other things that should come with your smoke alarms is the documentation. This is instructions on the sighting, so where it is to be positioned, and they've now been they are now all correct and line up with the ones that we've seen, all line up with what is in the National Construction Code and what is in the building regulation and the building fire safety regs. It will have installation instructions, wiring diagrams for sparkies and other installation instructions for how you can fix them to the building. And it will also have maintenance instructions, which if the sparkies are doing it, you'll see, when you get a house handed over, you open up the drawer and it's got all the instructions in it. Hang on to those, so it tells you what to do. The other thing that we need to look for is our evidence of suitability, and this is what we are looking for in the non-conforming building products team. So one of the things would be your product certification. You can see some examples on the screen there. There is the standards mark certificate, the yellow one, and you can see the red part with the 5 ticks. So you'll see that generally on the box. Another form of the certification there is the CSIRO, the active fire one, and you can see that's on the right-hand side of the screen. The bottom left of that has the blue circle with like the red tick in it. That's the active fire certification. Your alarms generally won't come with these certificates in the packet, but it may reference the number. You can see on the Standards Australia one there that's got the standards mark, it's got an SMK number. That's the license number, and you can check that that license number is current, just like you can check your registration, go onto the TMR app and check that a car is registered. Or you can do the same thing for your smoke alarm and see if it's registered and current. So to have a look for those things, you can go to the Joint Accreditation System of Australia and New Zealand, or JASANS as we call it. You can go to their website. I've got the website address there. And of those certificates, the bottom left-hand little square there shows you what that search outcome looks like. So you can check that certificate, check that the alarms that you've got are valid and current. If they're not on the website, you might be considering, do I need to be using this alarm? Remember, they're a life safety issue. Okay, so with the NCBP legislation, there's requirements to provide the information. So that's the installation instructions. And those installation instructions should be matching in with the building regs, having the positions, the 300mm off the ceiling, the 400mm off the fans and air conditioning and off lights. So you want to make sure that the alarms are correctly positioned so that they will work and will wake you up. Remember, use a licensed electrical contractor, because the licensed electrical contractor should be knowing all of the rules and getting good products that are using. One of the other things that there should be is your maintenance instructions, the things that tell you to test it, and each manufacturer may recommend it be tested more often than the annually, but at least annually. And then the things about, as was mentioned, for the environment. So if you should brush it or vacuum it once a month, just lightly, make sure you're getting out any dust or other things that could set the alarm off and cause false alarms and wake you up. Obviously, the things like do not paint, and then if you have a hardwired with a 9-volt battery, changing that 9-volt battery annually. So if you have an issue with a building product and you would like to bring it to the Commission's attention, if you have a look on the screen now, you can see there's a QR code. You can scan that and it will take you to the report an NCBP or safety incidents, and this form you can fill out information. We need the information sent to the NCBP inbox. You can fill out your information anonymously and just fill out the form and send it in to us so we can go and have a look at a product if you don't want any information to be tied to you. If you find something, please let us know, because we can't take an action against something that we don't know about. There's a list of the different products and a list of the different information that we need. The product, if it's offered to you on the website, if you take a screenshot of the website, just get the date, time, and the URL in on it, please, so that we can follow it up, because we find once we start making inquiries, quite often websites get changed. So how does QBCC support the smoke alarm laws? That's done through these through the NCBP laws like this, to make sure that our products that are used are safe and compliant. Also through our Building Works complaints process, if something was put in incorrectly or alarms got put in and they were painted, it can be addressed through that process potentially, but I hope it doesn't get to that sort of thing. So that's all we have for now. The email address is there if you wish to, or correction, the web address, the QBCC qld.gov.au, or the customer contact phone number 139 333 if you have any further questions. You can contact us there. So thanks for that. I'd like to hand over now to Alan Wilson, Executive Director from Alan Wilson Insurance Brokers, who's going to give us a presentation from the insurance prospect of the alarms. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks very much, Zane, and a good presentation. For those that don't know me, my name's Alan Wilson. I'm a qualified insurance broker and operating my own business in Traralgon. I've had about 50 years in the insurance industry, so you can guess how old I am. And I'd like to just thank you today for allowing me to be part of your seminars, and hopefully what I've got to say may help a little bit along the way. So who's Alan Wilson Insurance Brokers? Well, we run a license with the Australian federal government to conduct our business as an insurance broker. We're part of a worldwide PSC insurance group, which allows us to stretch into lots of other different countries and that as well. I've run this business for over 40 years now, and one of the things I'm proud of is that we're actually a Lloyd's of London cover holder, which allows us to insure some quite interesting situations and risks around the world. And we do actually operate a specialist fire protection scheme for those in the fire protection industry. So it's quite good. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the smoke alarms and the legislation, and basically why you should comply. Today, because of the insurance industry, there's not a real lot I can say, and you'll understand why. But from the 1st of January in 2027, it is going to be compulsory, or the rest of the law comes in, that you're going to need your photoelectric smoke alarms along the way. And we know that smoke alarms, they're there to help save lives and to reduce property damage. So they're a really important part of life and everything like that. So it's one of the reasons why we should comply and install smoke alarms. Let's have a look at the requirements from the insurance company's perspective and what we think the insurance industry want. So the insurance industry, they'll welcome this, what the Queensland Government initiative is. It's good. It's good productive stuff. It is proactive risk management, and it's any risk or any items of risk improvement that you do, the insurance industry will back. What it'll do, it'll lead to fewer dollars being paid out for claims and claims being reduced along the way. So the insurance industry is going to welcome it. One thing it won't do, I believe, is it's not going to reduce any insurance premiums. It's just part of law, and you're going to have to comply with what we actually have to do. So unfortunately, from that point of view, you're not going to get a reduction there in the insurance premiums, but you're going to have to comply. So from an insurance side, what happens if you don't comply to this new legislation? Well, the first thing that's going to happen if you do have a claim, if there's a fire in there, you could have an issue with getting paid on your claim. Now, under law, there's an insurance contracts law which has been introduced by the federal government, and there's a duty of disclosure in each insurance policy, so that when you go out to buy your insurance, you need to tell the insurance company all facts that they think and that you think could affect their acceptance of the insurances or what premiums or terms and conditions they offer. So if you don't tell them some things and there is a claim, under law, the insurance company then can turn around and say, I wouldn't have paid that, or I wouldn't have accepted that risk. I would have done this, I would have done that. And they can alter the terms of your insurance. They can even just refund your money and say you've got no cover. I've seen it happen quite a lot. So the insurance company then have got the right to reduce or deny your claim. Now you can try and refute it, but if you don't tell them all the stuff, they then turn around and can act any way they want. Now, traditionally, insurance companies, when it comes to making money, they've been making their money out of good investments. So when times are good, their returns are good. Shareholders are happy. But when times are tough, like they are now, investment returns are extremely low. So insurance companies have got to look for other ways to save money and reduce their costs. So what they do then is they look at claims and underwriting. So if claims are there and they can legally deny a claim, they will. I've seen it many times, and the situation is, a few years ago, you could ring up your friendly insurance manager and talk to them about it and perhaps get the claim paid. Today, that doesn't exist. They're all controlled by compliance. You can't get them to make ex gratia payments very well, and therefore it's very difficult for you or for me to come along and call in a favour and ask someone to pay a claim when they've got the option not to pay a claim. And particularly if the claim amounts are high, like a house burning down, there's a lot of money involved, so they won't want to pay it. And it happens, and it happens regularly. So even though associations can be very good with the insurance companies, they're controlled. And if you deal direct with them, it's even more difficult for you because you're only one person out of many, many thousands, and there's not a lot of loyalty there. It comes back to it. So it's difficult to do. Okay, so really, what's your answer? You really need to install or have installed your correct smoke alarms by the correct date, which is going to be the 1st of Jan 27. If you do that, you're not going to have an issue with any of your insurances because if there's a claim, the insurance company can't come back onto it. If you don't install it or don't comply with the correct installation, then the insurance company, at their option, can reduce or deny your claim, which you don't want. If there's for some reason that you can't install these smoke alarms by the date, what I suggest you do then is write to your insurance company, tell them that you can't install it for this particular reason, but it'll take you this long to do it. And then that's actually put the insurance company on notice then that you can't do it. And it's up to them. Then they can't deny your claim. They've got to write back to you and give you some reasons why not to do it. But the simple answer is along the way is transfer the risk to the insurance company, install your accredited and approved smoke alarm and do it by the date. And then you're not really going to have any issues at all with your insurance when the claim comes along. That's really, as I said, there's not a lot I can say about this one in insurance, because if you don't comply, they're not going to pay. And it's a pretty simple cut and dry case, this one, on your insurance and that. So look, I'm happy to answer any questions down at the end of the talk along the way when the other speakers are finished. And I thank you for allowing me to make a few comments today, and I'll pass across to Matt Duncan now, who from the association, Electrical Association, will talk a little bit more. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Alan. Yes, my name is Matt Duncan. I am the Technical Support Manager with Master Electricians Australia. We're a peak industry body for electrical contractors. We've been active in the electrical industry under a few names, but previously our primary work here was in Queensland under the Electrical Contractors Association of Queensland since we became national, but we've been an organisation that's been active for 88 years. So we've got a long history of working with electrical contractors and supporting them and their businesses. So a little bit about myself. I'm the Technical Support Manager there. I sit on a number of committees as well in that space. I work with our Wiring Rules Committee, so we work on all of the rules that set up for safe and compliant wiring in homes and businesses. I also sit with the Queensland Licensing Committee, and we deal with a number of licensing matters and disciplinary matters through them. In regards to the smoke alarm legislation, our organisation and my department in particular was quite involved with the planning and execution prior to 2017, and we consulted to help develop these laws, and very proud that they're in force at the moment. It's been a long time coming to get where we are now, but there's still a few steps to go. So I'll probably touch on a few of the points that some of our colleagues have already mentioned. But yeah, to reiterate, in 2017 was when this new legislation was enacted, and it was around all new homes being constructed at that time needed to meet these requirements. The further it was expanded in 2022 to all homes that were either sold from that date or for homes that were rentals from that date. And we like to think we've got a fairly good compliance. Actions are happening from there, and a good uptake of people doing the right thing. And the final stage is what we're heading to now, is that all homes must meet these requirements by the 1st of January 2027. What are those requirements, and how will they affect you as a homeowner or as a business operator looking to install smoke alarms? So smoke alarm locations came from a number of points first. We had the National Construction Code setting out what was required as a bare minimum, and then our Queensland laws added some of these additional ones on top. But the performance criteria that sits behind why we have smoke alarms and where to actually place them is actually quite simple. We want to place them so that smoke should not be able to reach a bedroom without first passing a smoke alarm. That way, we can ensure that any alarm will be correctly positioned to capture that smoke before it gets to a bedroom passageway where someone might be cut off from leaving. Now, it's great that Queensland's added these extra alarms into every bedroom, and we're nation leading in that regard. By having them in every bedroom, it gives us that early wake up, that additional noise to wake people from a deep sleep. But yeah, so adding them to every bedroom is this additional requirement. On top of that, we're ensuring that they are in hallways that lead to all bedrooms. But if a bedroom's not actually accessed by a hallway, it's got to be positioned between the general living area of the home and then that bedroom area of the home. And finally, if we have a story of a dwelling that does not contain bedrooms, it must be in the most likely path of travel to that exit. And it's good to note that the National Construction Code's definition of a story differs for homes in particular, that it also includes areas where there might be car parking or laundry facilities only. So some of those high-set Queenslanders that may have a number of those facilities underneath the home can fall into that definition, and you should have an alarm there to pick up smoke in those locations. Now, it's critical around placing a smoke alarm in a room. These are the must-nots. We must not have a smoke alarm within 300 mil of the corner of a ceiling or wall. So that's where the ceiling meets the wall. We've got to be 300 mil away. As we mentioned before, that's around those dead zones to stop smoke from sort of skipping over the alarm. In addition to that, 300 mil from a light fitting is required. It's interesting to note here that some of the alarm manufacturers actually have additional requirements above that 300 mil. We've seen some manufacturers include a requirement to have a 1 meter clearance from items of electrical noise, and they specifically cite some LED light fittings in that regard. So take into account that some of those requirements can be there above and beyond this minimum for the Queensland legislation. And then we've got the 400 mil requirements from an air conditioning vent or from the blades of a ceiling fan. And that's obviously just to stop those items from pushing air away and pushing the smoke specifically away from the air conditioners. From the smoke alarms. Now onto our functional requirements. So we've mentioned before that all alarms must be interconnected, and this is the critical part. That's making sure that if one alarm detects smoke, that every alarm in the home is going to be alerted and they will all go off, which gives everyone the best chance of escape. Now, those interconnects can be a wireless form of interconnection, or they can be a hardwired form. And that is separate from this second point. It's around where an existing alarm is hardwired, and that's hardwired for its power supply. It must remain hardwired. We have seen, unfortunately, a number of cases over the years where someone's taken a bit of a shortcut and they've removed the hardwired alarm and placed the battery alarm in its place. We've actually seen people also try to just place a battery alarm next to an existing hardwired alarm that was expiring in the hopes that they could, claim that they haven't replaced it. That doesn't really comply with the legislation. So yeah, making sure those hardwires stay where they're hardwired. From there, any additional alarms that you need to install. So this is, you might have had some alarms built with your home when it was constructed, but these additional alarms now need to go into your bedrooms. You may be able to add these alarms, can be either hardwired or powered by that non-removable 10-year lifespan battery. Very important to note that we've come across a number of smoke alarms that had a removable lithium-ion battery installed in, claiming to be 10-year, but they actually had a battery that could be removed. It was a 3-volt cell that went in and could be taken out. So we had a number of people getting caught out at the start when they were using those alarms. They might be perfectly fine to use in other states, but Queensland, we've specified that they must be non-removable so that they can't be tampered with. Next, it is that they are photoelectric only alarms, so no ionisation sensor contained within them. And lastly, they've got to be less than 10 years old. And that point has been covered a few times, but yeah, less than 10 years from the date of manufacture, not from the date which they were installed. Generally, that date of manufacture is printed on the alarm. It's a requirement to be on the alarm, but it may be in a number of different formats. Some of them have a sticker or a very easy to see piece of writing that gives you that manufacturer date. And some of them are molded into the plastic. You might see some examples where on a piece of equipment, there'll be 2 little plastic dials with an arrow pointing to a number or a month, and that can indicate, what year and month they were produced. So a couple of different ways there. Make sure you're taking a good look to spot that one, or contact your smoke alarm provider to assist with that. Thought I'd touch on a few different placement locations. This is where we can get a little bit tricky and highlight the need for consulting a professional to make sure we get the right locations. We can see here this is a 2-story home on the left. We've got no bedrooms in that downstairs area, so just one single alarm there is placed in blue on our path of travel to our exit. Now we move up to the second story, and there's a couple of ways this could apply here. We can see the alarms in the hallways leading to bedrooms 2 and 3. And then with the master bedroom, there is no specific hallway dedicated to it. So it's just in between where the rumpus room is, that general living area. And then, of course, in green is our alarms placed within the bedrooms. One thing to note, back to our clearance requirements, we may find with some of the smaller bedrooms, it's actually quite difficult to find the correct clearance. When you take into account being 300 mil off a wall and 400 mil from your ceiling fan, and if you have 3 or 4 downlights in that room, all of a sudden you could be left with quite a compact space or a unique space where that alarm will fit. So it really is important to take a good notice of where these parts are in the room before you decide to place them, or before your qualified professional, hopefully, helps you place them. Okay, onto this one. We've got a single story one, and a bit more of an open plan living design here. And this one actually we have 2 ways of compliance. So you can see the bedrooms there in green along the bottom. In the case of bedroom 1 and 2, there is a small hallway that leads to both of those. So placing an alarm in there is appropriate. But for bedroom 3 and 4, there's actually a couple of different ways you could comply. Being that the hallway sort of leads to all of bedroom 3 and 4 past the garage, a single alarm there could be appropriate. But alternatively, you could place an alarm outside of the entryway, off from the front door, and then one in that little corridor between the bathroom and the bedroom. Though we wouldn't necessarily always recommend that location. Steam from a bathroom can have some detrimental effects on the smoke alarm and cause some nuisance alarming. So good to watch out for those sort of locations. And finally, back to another 2-story, and this one's got some unique properties that we can talk about. On the lower side, again, no bedrooms on this ground floor, just that exit way out. But if someone was to convert that study, say, into a bedroom, they had some family members staying there on a permanent basis, then you'd look to add some extra ones in there. But for the top floor, outside of those mandatory ones in the bedrooms, 2 ways could actually come about for how we need these additional alarms. Now, if we were to look at that, the stairs coming up just had a open balustrade. There was no ceiling, floor to ceiling wall encapsulating that area, then we would need 2 additional alarms on that top floor. So one outside the main living suite, as it could actually account for any smoke coming up rising through that stairwell, and then one in that small corridor that leads to bedroom 3, 4, and 2. Now, alternatively, if that actually wasn't a balustraded type hand railing and it was actually a floor to ceiling wall, you could place a alarm where the yellow star is, just at the top of that stairwell, because that covers it as an entirety, being a hallway leading to all those rooms. So now I want to touch on some skill shortages. And thanks to Brad, he had some great figures, and I think mine are in a similar vein. I went about it my own way for the research, but we're looking at quite a number of homes in Queensland still needing to be done. So that 2.5 million homes approximately in Queensland at the moment, with around 2 million being dedicated to our Class 1 and townhouses. It's interesting to note that I haven't included or tried not to include apartments in this one. Whilst they still fall into these requirements, they can also have some variations where if that apartment building has a centralized smoke alarm management system or fire detection system, they may actually be able to utilize that as an alternative compliance method to these additional alarms that we're requiring here. So I try to focus just on your standalone homes. From data that I could gather, with our 630,000 odd rentals left, they should all be completed hopefully by now. And if you haven't got them completed by now, make sure you contact your landlord to say, hey, this hasn't been done right yet. But from there, we're looking at how many homes were actually sold after our 2022 date, but were built prior to 2017, which was when the legislation came in to have all of the alarms done correctly. So we got to about 350,000 homes might have fell into that category. So they get subtracted off our 2 million number. And then looking at the number of homes constructed since 2017 as well. So 220,000 was the number I came up with based on building approvals issued since then. Now, if we mix that in with our electrical contractors and our electricians, we've got 55,000 electricians in Queensland and around 12,500 contractors. Now, not all of those are going to be working. Not all of those are going to be working in the domestic space or be working in that smoke alarm space. So working on a basis of around 80% of those licenses being active businesses, and then approximately 60% performing domestic work. We're down to 5,760 odd contractors left to complete this work. Now we're running out of time, so 15 months to go until the deadline. And I'm looking at those numbers. Those 5,700 contractors need to do work on between 800,000 and 1.3 million buildings in that time. So that's quite a lot of work to be done. So looking anywhere from about 140 to 225 houses per contractor. Though I suspect that the actual number of people being available to do the work in that space could be a bit less than that 60%. So that's quite a bit of work for everyone to have done in that time frame. And if you take into account that most buildings are going to require somewhere in the vicinity of 5 to 6 alarms, we're talking 6 million smoke alarms to be purchased and brought into Queensland in that time frame as well. So really, the biggest takeaway I could say is don't leave this to the last minute. Get onto your licensed electrical contractor as soon as possible to get them to come and look. Because if you find you leave this another 12 months and you're into that last 6 months, and a number of other people have done the same thing, you may find yourself very short-skilled at that time, running down to the wire. So how can you check, though, if your contractor is licensed? We'd recommend you can go to the Electrical Safety Office's website. They are the regulator for licensing in Queensland for electrical licenses, and they've got a great little tool on there where you can check that your contractor is actually licensed. But alternative to that, Master Electrician's probably done all the hard work for you. We have a great tool on our website called FAME, Find a Master Electrician. If you come to www.masterelectricians.com.au and go to our FAME page, in there you can search for someone in your local area, put in your postcode, filter your search radius, and you'll get presented with all of the contractors that are available in your regions. And you can actually see from us as well who's won some awards, who's some of our more premium members as well. They've got great little badges on there. But yeah, it's a great lead up to helping you pick an electrician to come and help you with your work. If you want any further details, you can call Master Electricians on 1300 889 198 or send us an email. But that's mine, and I'm going to hand back to John. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matthew. Very much appreciated. I'll open it up now to the panel. And I mean, certainly, Matthew, the impetus there is correct around making sure that you get moving on this sooner rather than later. I'll bring the panel in for some Q&A, and if you just turn your screens and your mics on. First of all, thank you to all the panelists. Very informative, and we really appreciate the time that you've spent on this and allocated, giving up your time to talk through this important issue. I'll get straight into the questions. So Jordan writes to us, he says, is there a particular brand of domestic smoke alarms that is recommended by the FPA or the QFD? I won't speak for QFD, but I can say that FPA Australia doesn't endorse specific brands. What matters is that your smoke alarms, as Zane from the QBCC quite rightly pointed out, comply with AS 3786 and photovoltaic and interconnected and installed and maintained correctly, obviously. So, I mean, that said, I would draw your attention to one of our expert panelists who represents GT High Performance Smoke Alarms.
Thank you, John.
Goes without saying. And Brad, I might even, before I throw over to Paul from QFD for his response to the recommendation portion of the question, Brad, I might throw to you just for your unbiased view on how to go about selecting a
thank you, John. If I take trying to neutral. What I would say to anyone that's watching and listening here is I'd be very careful about buying online without doing the necessary homework. There are products that are sold online, and that's the likes of from Amazon to all the other online stores. That they have no regulation to comply. They have to sell an AS 3876 approved alarm. You can buy an alarm out of Germany, out of Europe, and bring it in. It's not compliant to Australian standards. Don't fall into that trap, and even to the point where some of the hardware stores, I'll say this, hardware stores don't always carry commercial quality alarms. They'll carry DIY stuff that really is entry level gear, and I'm sure Matt will back me up here from Master Electrician. Typically, if you're dealing with an electrician or an approved installer or someone who does this for a living, they will use commercial grade quality alarms that have typically a 10-year warranty, which is akin to a lifetime warranty. The manufacturer is better, the componentry is better. They're a much more reliable alarm. So when you're dealing with a safety product like this, cheap isn't always best. There are plenty of ways to save money within your property, but your safety componentry, such as working with smoke alarms, I wouldn't look at running for what's the cheapest first. I'd be looking for what's most suitable and do your homework on that. Commercial quality stuff, so electrical wholesalers carry those. Smoke alarm compliance companies typically carry those. Hardware companies, good luck to them. I'm not putting a bad word to them, but I'd be cautious doing that because typically you won't find too many contractors buying their smoke alarms from a hardware store. They'll buy commercial quality stuff from electrical wholesalers and the like.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Brad. Paul, it was specifically raised about whether there was a recommendation from the fire department. Is that something you want to comment on? And we don't necessarily have Paul, but I'm sure it's likely along the lines of us bridging the...
You there now, mate?
Oh, we got him. Have we got him?
Yep, I'm back. Yep. Sorry.
Well,
As the body responsible for regulating the compliance of smoke alarms in the industry, we have to maintain a neutral stance on recommending products. So QFD doesn't recommend any particular products, only that you must comply with the standard. But what I will say in that space is that, as they've mentioned, not all products are created equal, and some of the more expensive products on the market provide additional features as well to the homeowner. So the standard provides a basic requirement that these smoke alarm manufacturers must meet. But if you look at the different prices of products that are available on the market, you may be available to have additional features that can assist you where you have mobility issues or things like that. So I'm talking about remote controls and the capacity to manage some of those functions on your phone. So there are a range of products that offer some of those additional features that might be suitable to some property owners as well. Thanks, mate.
Very good. Yes, thanks so much. Just trying to power through these. Naomi asks, if a property was not originally built with hardwired alarms installed, but were installed later, can they be removed? Look, intuitively, I'd go with no, but we'll get confirmation from our friends at MEA, if you don't mind, Matthew, Master Electricians.
Yeah, we'd say no as well. We'd apply that similarly to how if a house didn't have an RCD or safety switch at its time of installation, but one had been installed now that met the current requirements, you couldn't take it backwards. So yeah, we stick by that with smoke alarms as well. Once installed on hardwired, we wouldn't want it to go backwards.
Indeed. Zane, anything to further on that or add or subtract?
It would be building work, and under the building regs, your smoke alarms have to be hardwired. Under the building regs, they don't have the provision for them to be battery powered. So any new alarms that are put in should be hardwired. I know the building fire safety regs allow the battery ones, and that's to have upgraded because having a working smoke alarm is the first thing you need to do.
Yep, I think it's very clear. Thanks, gentlemen. Dale asks, what is the correct course of action where you have a mains-powered alarm which has lost mains power due to some fault with the wiring and not the alarm? Are you able to resolve the power supply issue by installing a lithium alarm, or do you need to engage an electrician to rewire the alarm? It sounds like a specific technical question that may be... who am I going to throw to? Who's looking more engaged on the panel there? Brad, you smile. Got you.
Okay, so I would, in that scenario, I would say you would want to go back to get an electrician in there again. That is the safest course of action with that. So if you've lost power, probably a side note here I just want to quickly touch on. A lot of people get confused with interconnection and mains power. They think one and the same, and it's just a technicality in the wording. How they talk to each other and how they're powered are two totally separate conversations. So that would be the first thing. So the second thing is, certainly in the question here that Dale's asking is, should you put a lithium battery in instead of that? No, again, you've had to along and sign off on that building that it has got mains power alarms in it. It has to stay the same as that. It's no different than getting a car roadworthy. signed off to be certified in that matter. If it remains powered, it has to stay like for like. That's what the law is. That's what the legislation is. So you do need to engage with an electrician to sort out that wiring. Don't J-box it. Sort it out. Electricians know what they're doing. That is work for a Sparky. Get them in and get your alarms upgraded at the same time.
Matt from MEA, I assume that's endorsed.
Completely agree with that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well done. Pete asks clarification on the location requirements of smoke alarms, particularly in relation to bulkheads, etc. Is the requirement only for an alarm outside of a bedroom or in every space between a bedroom and an exit if a bulkhead creates the dead air space? Perhaps that's our resident inspector. Is that Paul?
Yeah, mate, I can answer that. So
yeah, good.
The legislation is not conclusive when it comes to that. So I guess from the perspective of the Queensland Fire Department, the messaging that we've provided to people asking questions around the amount of alarms required in a hallway and the introduction of those like decorative bulkheads is that you need to consider the intent of the system. So if the system's designed to protect your family while they sleep, and it would be more effective to have a interconnected smoke alarm on either side of that bulkhead because it'll give your family a greater chance of survivability and early warning, then we would encourage homeowners to consider the installation of additional alarms to complement that system. But yeah, the legislation is inconclusive when it comes to sort of how many you need to put or whether it's either side of a bulkhead. As you can appreciate, it's hard to legislate for the infinite amount of architectural designs in a home. So that's why it gives you some flexibility to think about correct placement like that.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Paul. And
Can I just quickly jump in on that? And common sense has to prevail. Don't put it outside of a bathroom, for example, because you're trying to stick to the letter of the law. And I've seen it plenty of times where guys have been hung up on the legislation and then they've installed a smoke alarm directly outside of the bathroom, where bathrooms are big, or laundries are the other big one, where in the hallway, typically off a hallway, you've got a bathroom or a laundry. Those two rooms generate a lot of potential aggravation for smoke alarms through steam, dust, humidity, what have you. So common sense has got to prevail there as well. These are a life-saving device, 100% agreed, but at the point of hot, moist air coming blasting out from a laundry because you've got, a dryer running, or more still a bathroom where you may open after a hot shower and steam come out, guaranteed the smoke alarm job may not be squealing off no good reason. So common sense needs to be applied at the same time.
yeah, all right, very good. Another question from a panelist, it seems. Alan, this one might be for you. Will insurers refresh renewal documents to reflect Queensland smoke alarm reforms and, in practice, ask policyholders explicitly whether their property is compliant with the 2027 requirements? I guess you'll have to use your crystal ball there, but what are your thoughts as to what the likelihood of that eventuating is?
You're on silent, Alan.
We might come back to that because there are plenty of questions. Have we got him?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Good. John, no, they won't notify you because it's actually law in Queensland. So it's up to the homeowner to abide the law, and that's what it says. So the insurance companies won't send anything out. They'll just investigate when there's a fire.
Yeah, very good. Thought as much. Thanks for the clarification. I have another one here. Jordan writes, if an existing hardwire smoke alarm is that one we already had? No. If an existing hardwired smoke alarm is in a now classified non-compliant zone, can that alarm be removed if unable to move into a compliant location? That might be for our inspector friend as well, if you don't mind, Paul.
Yep. No, I know Zane and I actually had a conversation about this only a few days ago. And so this is a greater issue, I think, than people realise, is that when they've gone to upgrade their domestic dwellings and they've looked at the existing hardwired smoke alarms in situ, they've realised that the alarms were never put in an approved location to start with. So it's the position of both QBCC and the fire department that if those alarms were incorrectly installed in the first place, then the dwelling wasn't compliant, so it doesn't meet the requirements, and therefore the alarm can be moved and located in a more suitable, correct and compliant location.
Yeah, seems common sense prevailing. Well done. Megan writes, hi. Oh, hi, Megan. Thank you. Can I have more detail on technical definition of a story, e.g. splits/staggered levels? Oh, I see, yes. Queensland-style houses on stilts with a makeshift laundry, fully enclosed, built under the house, etc. All right. Who's looking for that one? Is that a Zane or I know Matthew spoke about it. Zane, do we throw to you?
If you've got split level, remember the smoke rises. So you want it to be at the higher level, but you may need one at a lower level, because if you've got a fire in the laundry and it's going to track across the ceiling and go to the higher level, you would have it at the lower level and one at the higher level. That way you've got the best chance of early warning.
Can I also add to that as well, Zane, is that as an operational firefighter, I've attended many fires in Queenslander-style houses that are like elevated with no living underneath, but they might have a laundry or non-habitable space under there. And technically, they wouldn't be required to have a smoke alarm, but we would encourage you to consider whether one might be appropriate in some of those locations. Because as they were saying, if you have a fire under your dwelling, that it's going to spread through the floor, and you don't want to wait till that fire spreads and then is picked up by the smoke alarms within your dwelling itself. So there are elements to consider in terms of bug and debris egress into those smoke alarms if they're in an exposed location where the underneath of a house is not sealed up. But you may be able to buy alternative smoke alarms or even heat alarms that can connect to your existing alarms that may be able to provide you an extra level of detection underneath your dwelling.
Correct. And the NCC does have that in the explanatory informations. If a smoke alarm is going to give spurious or false alarms, that you can use a suitable alternative. And if you were doing that and it's under new construction, deal with get your contractor to deal with the building certifier so you can get that confirmed. It's on record.
Yeah, very good. Thank you all. Matthew, this one might be for you. Why doesn't the MEA mention wireless smoke alarms in their information, i.e. the PDF handout? The message delivered may be slightly misleading in that only hardwired smoke alarms are acceptable. Why doesn't that mention? Okay. This could lead to confusion for the consumers as to what is acceptable.
Sure.
Yeah, it'll just be the language around.
It is. Yeah, I took a quick look at it just to make sure what was there again, but it was all around that. The only time we mentioned about the hardwired alarm is when we're replacing an additional hardwired alarm. So we weren't making reference to the interconnect aspect of it. That can absolutely be wireless. And new alarms could be battery.
Yep, very good. Hopefully that answers the question. Ruth, are mixed sensor alarms suitable? Can heat alarms be used in conjunction with smoke alarms in other areas where lithium-ion batteries are charged, for instance? Volunteers. Brad's on mute.
Yep, your building laws are a minimum standard. So by all means, stick in more than the minimum standard. If you want to stick heat alarm ones in, yeah, have them. It's a great idea to have them in a garage where you may be charging other devices or electric car or something, so you get an early warning. The earlier the warning, the sooner you get out.
Yeah, and I think that's true of the previous example, right? Where whether it's letter of the law or not, there's enough of a chance that the passive fire protection treatment between the makeshift arrangement underneath the home and the ceiling above or the floor hasn't been treated to the appropriate level. So smoke alarms will be your first best protocol.
The market will respond to that as well, John. I've got to say, as a supplier, as a manufacturer, we're well and truly across the fact that the gorilla in the room is lithium. and that is, charging devices in garages. So, in a case, and certainly not trying to promote here, but we've got a fire detecting camera now that we are just about to launch that will pick up 10 centimetre flame from 10 metres away. We've got that interconnected to the smoke alarms inside your dwelling. So that's going to be this kind of thing where marketplace will move towards where the opportunity or threat is, I guess. And that's one of those things. Heat alarms are a great start point. Garages, obviously, and as we move more into electric cars into garages, you'll have less fumes, so you can potentially put a smoke alarm in there. They work by cars, electric cars, but in the interim, certainly that risk of, I think there's a staggering amount of data from garages now, and that is the threat, because the first detector that will pick that up is inside the dwelling, so the smoke has to get underneath the door that closes off the garage to the dwelling, and then let off that smoke alarm before the occupants will know about it. So there's a challenge. Again, like I said, market is coming to that challenge, like these lithium battery fire detecting cameras that can spot flames. So that's just to watch the marketplace and see what comes forward in the next couple of months.
Yeah, good. Thanks so much, Brad. Look, we are at time, but there's still a bunch of questions there. So I'm conscious of the panelists' time. So if you need to jump off, then so be it. But I'm committed to try and get through some of these questions. There's maybe another dozen or so. We're okay to keep going, but feel free to jump off if you have some other obligation. Great. So Suzanne writes, it was mentioned that replacement, and Brad, this one might be for you, the replacement date should be going off the manufacturer's date. Is that still the case with Emerald smoke alarms that say to replace after 10 years of service? What are your thoughts on that?
The reality is that you're probably going to be dealing with something inside of 6 months from that manufacturer date to the expiry date. They run fairly closely, and every manufacturer forward dates at time of manufacturing, so they'll date stamp 3 to 6 months at least of forward of what the real manufacturer date was, because that allows for shipping and time on shelf and what have you by the time it goes up. So by the time the 10 years has passed and that alarm is due for renewal, I mean, there's so many variables that. Has that alarm lasted 10 years? Has it been swapped out? Has it been changed? Has it been smashed off the ceiling? So I get a lot of variables inside that. With some of those more like Emerald, but it's that, yeah, certainly from data manufacturer and AS certifications allow for these alarms for the battery, and that's probably the main thing they worry about in that 10-year life. Will it have enough battery life to it? The standards they have that certification level means the battery will last at least 15 years. Now, we're not going to say that you can have the alarm up for 15 years. The battery has got more power in it than what it needs to do that 10-year lifespan, which is marketed as. So, wouldn't be worried if that is the case. So the lady that's asking with that, but certainly that 10-year lifespan from manufacturer to date of install, you're really dealing with, we all work fairly fresh with our stock and it's forward dated a little bit. It's 3 to 6 months tops in between all of that. So there is really no need to worry about that.
Okay, all right. No, very good. Thank you, Brad. So Ben asks here, a bit of a long one, bear with me. Our Queensland legislation states the following for installation of smoke alarm on a wall. And he puts in quotes here, otherwise a wall in an area that is between 100 millimetres and 300 millimetres from the ceiling. This requirement is different to other states and territories, the NCC and the manufacturer's instructions, which class the area within 300 millimetres down from the ceiling as dead airspace. Why is this installation specification different for Queensland, as well as what complications does this have regarding breaching the manufacturer's instructions? A fairly nuanced one. In terms of the linkage between the NCC and the Queensland legislation, Zane, if you don't mind, if I can go to you for that linkage around how states approach the interpretation of the NCC and where there's differences, which one overrides which.
So Act is the highest. So for the Building Act, which has nothing in it, it calls up the regs. So the building regs are a higher power than the NCC. So the building regs override the NCC. Having said that, you still got to do it as per the manufacturer's instructions. Otherwise, you're not using the product for its intended use. So if it says 300 mil, even though the legislation says you can stick it 100 to use that product, you've got to use it 300 mil down for it to be in the correct space.
So essentially, it might be within Queensland, you've got a hold of the wrong product if it may not be able to be used in Queensland conditions under the legislation.
And that is correct. And that is an otherwise. So if you can't stick it in the other positions, it allows you to put it there. So you are complying with the legislation, but would the alarm work? So the manufacturers have said, look, our alarm is required to be used in this manner. So you've got to use it in that manner as well.
Yeah, understood. I think that covers it unless anyone wants to add anything to that. Very good. Gilson writes, could someone please confirm that in the last 2-story home slide, I think this is Matt, your slide, was it mentioned that where a yellow smoke alarm is installed, the blue ones are not required? Is that the interpretation of the diagram?
Yeah, I recall that one. Yes. That yellow alarm was an alternative compliance method. So I think it was relating to where they had a full height wall on that one. Yeah, the blues wouldn't be needed. You could do that with the single one alarm in yellow.
Yeah, no, very good. And by the way, just as a mention to everyone on the session today, is that this has been recorded and will go up on fpaaplus.com.au, so fpaaplus.com.au, so you can go and get any of the information that you might have been off getting a coffee during or otherwise. Stefan writes, AS 1670 provides guidance. Oh, it's just moved on me. Guidance on bulkheads. Yes, thank you. Monica writes, compliance certificate. Is the Form 12 still the relevant form to forward for compliance to real estate agents, such property owners and builders, that all smoke alarms are installed and interconnected and compliant with the new regulation? Is that the correct form?
I'd like to jump in there and say that the Form 12 was never the right form for that purpose. It was misconstrued by quite a number of real estate agents for that. A simple statement that the work has been done is more than enough to sign that off.
Okay, so
Can I just jump in there as well? So the legislation doesn't actually require any compliance documentation, but this is a process that the real estate industry has adopted as a way to manage compliance in rental properties. So I guess just to be clear, the legislation doesn't require it, but the arrangement that you have with your managing agent may do to prove the compliance of those alarms.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Suzanne writes, in the situation such as a large apartment buildings where the ceilings are concrete slabs and original smoke alarms have been placed hard up against the corner/wall, is it required to extend the wiring slash chase the ceiling, etc., to move the smoke alarms to be compliant with placement, or is this a situation we can remove a hardwired smoke alarm and replace with a standalone 10-year lithium battery alarm? So this is a specific situational issue. Who would like to proffer some advice?
Well, I could say that if you have any individual situations that you'd like comment on, then you can send through an inquiry to that smoke alarms QFD email address, and we'll address particular situations with people. But I think it goes back to that statement before about if you have an alarm that's in an incorrect location, then the best thing that you can do for yourself and any potential issues in the future is to relocate an alarm or install a new alarm at a compliant location.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, it's a variable. It's quite big. If it's a strata, if it's onto a fire panel, it goes back. I mean, in a larger apartment building, typically that would have a fire panel to it. So you're dealing with a whole different level of smoke alarm compared to, our domestic little residential smoke alarms that are for standalones. That is something that I'd be chasing through corporate strata or time to ask that question.
Okay, Very good. Thank you, Brad. Kevin asks, this one might be for you, Paul. What are the top 3 things that start fires in homes? Short and sharp.
I guess complacency is probably the top of the list.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and just ensuring that you are. We obviously talked a little bit about the lithium-ion battery storage devices earlier as well. So it's just about managing the risk in your home, making sure that you're charging things with the right cords, that you're not putting charging devices in your bedrooms, all those sorts of things. So it's really just about complacency and doing that situational risk management in your own house to try and minimise the likelihood of fire breaking out.
Yeah, no, I think that's sound advice, Paul. And this legislation really hasn't come in at a better time in terms of the risk of fire in homes. I mean, there's a thing called flashover with a fire as to when it's up and out of control, and the time from when the initial ignition occurs and then through to flashover is drastically reducing as we continue to add more plasticized furnishings and others. Things into the home, and these plastics are essentially made of forms of petroleum. So we're adding petrol to our homes almost quite literally, and then introducing a fairly unforgiving fuel source and ignition source in lithium-ion batteries. It's to say it's a tinderbox wouldn't be an exaggeration. So the sooner you know what's going on in your home, the better. The sources obviously are important, and you can reduce some of those risks with good lithium-ion battery management, getting the right charges, making sure they're charged separate from the home, making sure you're checking them for damage and a host of other things. And there's vast amounts of material online that you can get. But yes, complacency, that's a good answer. Thanks so much, Paul. Jordan also writes, can an existing hardwired smoke alarm in a domestic dwelling kitchen be removed when upgrading to meet the current legislation? Maybe Zane on that one? Yep.
First question I want to ask is, was it lawfully installed? So go and have a look for the building approval records, and was it lawfully installed? There may be some silly reason that it's been put in there, or some reason that we don't know about. So go and find out if it does. May need to engage a building certifier to ask the question and pay them an appropriate fee, and then they can give you written advice. There's forms that they can use for doing that to give you the advice to go, no, that's not, because there may have been a performance solution done and it had it as an example, or it may have been someone decided, no, I wanted to put one in and they've just had a sparky stick one in. Don't know. So I'd be looking at, was it lawfully put in the first place and required as part of a building approval, and then just getting confirmation that you can remove it beforehand.
Yeah, thank you, Zane. Matt, this one might be for you, and I know it might be another situational thing, but Naomi writes, I have had an occasion where the electrician has removed 2 existing hardwired alarms and put one central alarm in. Is this okay?
Again, it is going to be situational. It could depend on whether those alarms were mandatory alarms to be there or were additional alarms. So potentially one of those alarms could have been an additional alarm, and that was refitted back with the single alarm to do the job of 2, and it meets all the compliance requirements. It could be okay. But if they were both mandatory alarms, then they probably should have stayed where they were.
Yeah, good answer. Unfortunately, perhaps Naomi, there's more investigation to be done. Gilson here writes a good one. If a hardwired alarm has no interconnection, can we use wireless, or does it need to be hardwired interconnection?
I can answer that too. You could use a wireless to do the job. In a lot of cases, if the existing alarm is a hardwired alarm, it may need to be replaced with an alarm that has the option for that wireless connection to talk to if you were, say, putting in battery alarms in the bedrooms that had the wireless connection. There's quite a number of brands that have that function available. Otherwise, yes, you might be left with running a cabled version.
Yeah, you can't mix and match brands with the other things. I would jump there and say that's a bit of a trick where people think I've got a hardwired, I'll literally hardwire it to another alarm and just run a decent copy between the 2. Brands don't talk to each other, and you avoid warranty when you do that. So you can't connect a GT smoke alarm to a red smoke alarm to a Clipsil to a Brooks, and think because they're daisy chained with a piece of copper between them, that's in a connection and it'll work. You'll avoid warranty from just about everyone, and you will bring on so much activity, because it's really and honestly at this interconnection point, you've got to follow the house and put fresh new alarms through that are the same brand, the same year, the same age, that all talk to each other properly. And that's again another reason why you use a qualified expert to do this, because they know that.
Yeah, very good. Another one here that just talks about the compliance and enforcement piece, particularly enforcement. So how is the compliance currently being and will be monitored through the legislation, through enforcement? And essentially what mechanisms will be used and where will it be picked up?
Yep, so I guess that's me. So as I mentioned before, the QFD position on this is that we believe that investing in community engagement and education on this topic is the best way to move the thinking of the community and the compliance forward, and to achieve broad-ranging compliance in domestic dwellings. So we already take complaints in relation to domestic smoke alarm complaints, which are investigated, and we try to work proactively with those occupiers and the property owners to bring those properties up to the compliance standard. I guess we examine each situation pragmatically on a case-by-case basis as well, and we work with those individuals to ultimately, get them to a position where they've updated that dwelling. The fire service has the fire department has community safety branches and community safety units regionally all over Queensland. So we do have staff in each of the regional centres that are dedicated to educating and engaging on these subjects. So yeah, that's sort of where we sit on that.
Yeah, understood. Thanks so much. Zane, this one might be for you, just around the QBCC, but there may not be an answer to this, or it may be above your pay grade, I'm not sure. Is there any interest from the QBCC to start to require detectors in non-habitable locations in future iterations of the legislation change? You know if that's been discussed?
So QBCC, as the building regulator, regulates the legislation as given to us by the government of the day. We don't write the legislation. Yeah. So if someone wants or has a suggestion to change the legislation, they need to go to the relevant department. So Department of Housing and Public Works write the building legislation and the policy for building legislation. So if someone wanted something changed, they would approach through that. They might approach through other means, such as their associations, to increase their numbers of their voice, to go, this is a change we want because of X, Y, Z. But the department are the people who write the legislation that the minister takes to Parliament. So the government of the day set the legislation, not us as the regulator. We just get to regulate it.
That's right. Turn it into practice, into reality. Just finally, last one, Naomi writes, Emerald alarms state on the back, not suitable for wall mount locations. Okay. However, Active Fire Cert says you can. Which one do we follow? Manufacturer or Active Fire?
Yep, I'll answer that one for you.
Yeah, good.
You'll need to follow in the first instance, the manufacturer, because that is a requirement in the standard that they put on it, on the marking on the package, whether it is suitable for wall mounting or ceiling mounting. So it is a requirement like that. If the manufacturer says one thing and the certification says another, you might like to hop on the QBCC website and send us some information for the non-conforming building products team to have a look at that. I'm not aware of that one as such, so giving us some information on that to look at may be useful. Thank you, Naomi.
Yeah, I think avoiding using a product for its non-intended use, specifically if they say that quite overtly on the packaging, would be something that I would avoid, and I'm sure the panel would agree.
Yep, and we just get the certification just to make sure that it's have they got that correct? Did they leave out a word or something? I don't know. So they should give us the information so we can have a look at it.
Indeed. Yep, very good. So thank you again to all the panelists and everyone that attended. It's very much appreciated and very important topic. As I said, this has been recorded, so fpaaplus.com.au. Also, National Fire Protection Month, which this webinar is part of, is ongoing through the remainder of September. So I'd encourage you to get involved in the final week of NFPM, and that can be found at National FP Month, FP being Fire Protection, nationalfpmonth.com.au. And please, so I'd encourage you to get involved in that. And please, if you could, hang around for a moment to complete the survey. If you can, it certainly goes a long way because it helps us improve these into the future, and particularly those that are such important communication tools for broader community. So thank you all again. Thanks for coming along, and enjoy the rest of your day.